Dun 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 dun. Little pig, let me in.
Little pig, let me in. Man, if they didn't have Negan for The Walking Dead, probably would have ended a lot sooner than it did. Well, shit, I guess it's still going. Anyways, all right, Helldivers. Today we're going to be making a melee guide, or how to make a melee loadout for Helldivers 2. And that's because we're going to keep getting additions to our melee arsenal. We already have the stun lance, we have the stun baton, and we have the combat hatchet. You bet your ass we're eventually going to get a saber, maybe a chainsword. I don't know, but we need to be prepared. So we're going to go through the equipment, some choices we need to make there in the armor department and in the grenade section as well. And then for our stratagems, we got a little wiggle room to really optimize this playstyle of being in melee range and just being an absolute terror. Now, I will say right off the rip, I'm mostly going to be talking about the squids and maybe the bugs a little bit. And then for the bots, I really don't like to go melee too often. I feel like it struggles there. But the major points and takeaways from this video, yeah, you're going to be able to basically take this kit into against anybody and find success. It's going to be varying degrees of success based on kind of the seeds of the map you get. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you go into a bug map and then you get something that has a bunch of bile spewers, well, being in melee range is gonna suck ass. Whereas in the squids right now, their full army isn't against us and they don't really have that much variation as far as like different maps and what spawns. So bringing this is going to be much more reliable against the squids. But that's the intro out of the way. Let's go ahead and get into the equipment. Now, moving in game here and talking about the equipment. For our primary weapon, we're going to want something that can stagger or stun. In my case here, I like the pummeler. We'll talk a little bit more about the pummeler when we get to the stratagem section, but just know, pummeler, something like the halt, any of these shotguns actually do a really good job. But I want something that can stagger and has like stopping power. And then moving over to our secondary, so we have 3 melee weapons right now. We have the combat hatchet, we have the stun lance, and we have the stun baton. Out of these 3, my favorite is the combat hatchet. Now, if we actually go over to the wiki page for the combat hatchet, you can see it does 110 damage. You get the breakdown of how that damage all works. And then if we switch over to the stun lance, you see that it actually does the same damage. It's just how this weapon hits and how it strikes is going to be different. That I don't really like the stun lance and the prodding factor. Not a fan of it. I actually like the stun baton and the way the hatchet work better. But then if we move over to the stun baton, you can see it actually only does 50 damage, so not that great. But again, how it swings, that's very much down to personal preference. So those are our weapon choices there. Now when it comes to throwables, I think the stun grenade is actually a pretty good option here to throw into a pack of voteless or overseers and just lock them down and then just start going to town. I think that's really effective. Now, if you're going to take this against the bugs, this is still really good. It's a great way to go into a fight or even stun a charger to get in the right position to stun lock them with the stun lance. Very capable of doing that. So this is a great opener, I would say, and a little bit less risk when running into a chaff, basically. And I'm always a fan of the thermite versus the bugs as well, just to take out all those heavy targets. And then something like gas or smoke, I actually don't have the gas grenade unlocked on this account yet, but something like smoke, I just don't think they do a good enough job, or at least smoke doesn't. Gas, on the other hand, if you bring some gas resistance armor, I think that can work. You'll make all the enemies confused, and then you can just go to town on all of them. So that is an option. It's just you're going to be hurting yourself. But those are the 4 choices I would make as far as your grenade. Now, armor-wise, obviously, peak physique for that increased melee damage, 100%, really helpful. But additionally, in the latest war bomb we got integrated explosive. We're going to be in melee range, so if we die, we're going to do a bunch of damage. When I initially basically reviewed this explosive here doesn't do a lot of damage to overseers, but something like chargers, it will one-shot them. So that's a play. And then obviously something like Democracy Protects was going to help you with survivability. That's a good choice as well. My choice is probably always going to be peak physique. I just want to do as much like shredding damage as possible. And then let's move on over to the stratagems. I want a pretty reliable backpack, and I think the ballistic shield is finally that. The reason why I didn't make something like this when melee weapons were first introduced is because this ballistic shield did not work in melee range. Well, now it does. In addition to that, we got the hatchet, which I like as my melee weapon a lot better than the other 2. Now, you could take something like the guard dog or even the shield generator backpack. I think those are decent choices. And then even the directional shield here is a good choice. But one of these more like defensive protection stratagem choices for your back slot, that's what I would go with because it's going to synergize with your melee weapon, but also that pummeler that I'm going to be choosing. Now, if you take something like the shield generator backpack, that's going to free up both your hands and it still does a really good job at protection. So maybe the halt I would then take with this shield generator backpack. But for me in this video, yeah, you're going to be seeing the ballistic shield, the pummeler, and then the combat hatchet. So in addition to taking one of these backpack slots, I would then pick a stratagem weapon that's going to be your heavy hitter for those targets that you basically, it's going to take a while to melee down. I'm thinking of harvesters, I'm thinking of bile titans, something like that. Quasar cannon, going to be a good choice here. But my choice is probably going to be the commando because again, I'm leaning more towards talking about the squids. And I think the commando is S tier versus the squid still. And that's because you can one-shot harvesters. You've got this guided missile. It comes back on a short cooldown. You can rapid fire the rockets. Just a lot of strengths when it comes to the commando versus the squids. But again, you can choose whatever stratagem weapon you want. Just know the role that it's going to play in your kit is for those targets that really meleeing them is going to be a struggle. So you want this stratagem weapon basically to bust out in those situations. Railgun would also work here too. But yeah, I'm going to go with the commando. So we got our backpack and we got our stratagem weapon. Now, when it comes to our other choices, EMS, smoke strike, these are okay. Smoke strike is really meant for the bots. The other ones, it kind of struggles a little bit. I just wouldn't take it. Other than that, maybe taking one of the mines isn't a bad idea either. Again, we're going to want to be able to get in there in lockdown areas and have cover. So if we're talking about having cover, well, then there's nothing better than the sentry turrets. These things will cover your ass. Now, I'd stay away from the Gatling because this thing's going to tear through you if you're caught in its fire. But something like the EMS mortar I actually think is better than the EMS strike. So I think one of these can work as well. And I didn't even unlock the gas yet. I should probably do that. I did it on my PlayStation account, but I haven't done it on Steam. And then really quick, just to go over the orbital cannons and the airstrikes, I don't know how much these necessarily will be working for you in that melee range, but I think with the backpack and the stratagem weapon, the loadout, the kit is already complete. There's a lot of flex choices you have here depending on what you're going up against. But really to put a stamp on like what are you going to choose as your last two slots, I would probably actually go with either the auto cannon or the rocket sentry, again because we are covered as far as medium chaff and then the light chaff, especially with our hatchet or our stun land. And so I want something that's going to not absolutely obliterate me like a Gatling sentry, and I want something that's going to be reliable for taking out those heavier targets. So let's go on and move to the overview section. We'll kind of talk about how this loadout works overall. So overview wise, how does this loadout, how does this kit play? Well, this is very much a risk reward playstyle because being in melee range, it's just going to be dangerous by the nature of being very close to all your enemies, both on the bugs, squids, hell, even the bot side. So if there is a big pack of chaff or it's a base or something like that, set down your sentries first before you start getting in there. And really the rest is just chopping and hacking away. And you really don't have to stop doing that until something like a bile titan shows up, a charger that you have to be aware of, the impaler tentacles. Then you have to stop, you have to swivel, you have to find that high priority target and take them out with something like your backpack weapon, like the commando, the railgun, the quasar cannon. Now your primary weapon during all this is going to be used to basically lock down something like overseers. You go in there, you start shooting them with your pummeler, they get staggered and stunned, and then you run in there and you just start wailing on them. Something like the pummeler also is going to help you get out of bad situations if you basically need to hit the reset button because you're out of stims, there's still a lot left to kill. Using the pummeler to run and gun, basically stop everybody, is going to let you get away, call down another resupply, scavenge around for something else, and basically get resupplied to head back into the fight. Now, one of your worst enemies with this build might be your teammates. They're going to be throwing down eagles, they're going to be throwing down orbital strikes, they might just be obliterating areas with like the napalm orbital. So you being in melee range, you really need to watch out for your teammates as far as like what are they using, and hopefully they don't call down on you. But guess what? Sometimes that is just going to happen. This is very much going to be a play style that sometimes you're just going to get on like an absolute roll and just tear through so many enemies. And then other times you're just going to keep getting basically destroyed because either your teammates Maybe you just get bad RNG as far as where the enemies keep hitting you. So just know there is a bit of a learning curve before I think this build can really click. But overall, I think this is a fun playstyle. Like I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to be getting more melee weapons. So I think having a kit like this in your arsenal is going to be fun to bust out every now and then and just do a different playstyle, because melee in this game is actually a ton of fun if you haven't tried it. But that's the kit, that's the loadout. Let me know what you all are doing for your melee options, if you're even making any of these choices, or you're just bringing, you know, the hatchet or the stun baton just for fun, just to whip out every now and then. There are a bunch of little choices you can make with this to basically tailor it to your playstyle that you would find helpful. I didn't even mention the medic armor, that perk, because that's going to give you more stims. That means more survivability. So that's a choice also. And just to cover boosters, those are always fill as needed as far as what your squad has picked or has not picked yet. But anyways, that's the video, Helldivers. I will see you next time. Peace and take care.